This is page 315. We're going to start with the Your Turn at the top of the page. Please read along with me. Roberto is dividing his baseball cards equally among himself, his brother, and his 3 friends. Roberto was left with 9 cards. How many cards did Roberto give away? Write and solve an equation to solve the problem. So there's actually kind of 2 parts to this. Let's go and figure out what kind of problem this is. It says he's dividing. So since this is algebra, we're going to write division as a fraction. And he's dividing his baseball cards. How many cards does he have? We don't know that. So you could start with B for baseball cards. And he's going to divide those by how many people? Some kids would say 3, but it's not going to be 3 because it's himself, his brother, and his 3 friends. How many people is that? It's a total of 5. So the expression is B divided by 5. This is the number of baseball cards. This is the 5 people it's dividing. And Roberto was left with 9 cards. That means equals 9. Now that's kind of the first part of the problem. We have written our equation. Now we have to solve it. And do you remember how to solve this equation? Well, we do the opposite of division. The opposite of divide by 5 is to multiply by 5. So I'm going to multiply each side of the equation by 5. And this should make perfect sense. This part right here is tricky. But I do 9 times 5 and I get 45. And that should make sense because if I took 45 out, or if I took B out and put 45 there, it would look like this. 45 over 5, that means divided by. 45 divided by 5 is equal to 9. He started with 45 cards. Now that doesn't technically answer the question yet. I'm going to go through that with you right now. We're going to read carefully and figure out why not. So B is equal to 45. Now we're not quite done. We've done most of it. But pay attention to the fact that it says right here that we think he had 45 baseball cards. He divided those among himself, his brother, and his 3 friends, and he was left with 9 cards. How many cards did Roberto give away? Well, he started with 45 cards, and he ended with 9. Well, that means that he didn't give away all 45. He kept 9. So he's going to subtract 45 minus 9, and you're going to get 36. The answer is he gave away 36 cards. Did you notice that that's a 2-part problem? This part right here is the equation, and this part right here is the word problem. So it was definitely kind of a tricky problem. All right, good job. Let's move on. All right, let's move on. It says writing real-world problems. You can write a real-world problem for a given equation. Example 4, write a real-world problem for the equation 8x equals 72, then solve the problem. Step 1 says examine each part of the equation. X is the unknown value you want to find. 8 is multiplied by x. Equals 72 means that after multiplying 8 and x, the result is 72. Step 2 is write a real-world situation that involves multiplying 2 quantities. A hot air balloon flew at 8 miles per hour. Write and solve a multiplication equation to find out how many hours the balloon traveled if it covered a distance of 72 miles. The equation would be 8x equals 72. You would divide each side of the equation by 8 and you'd get 9. X is equal to 9. The balloon would have traveled for 9 hours. For the Your Turn, we're asked to do something like that. You could do something basically the same, or you could use something with like money. That's the way I like to look at this one. Here's what I'm thinking, and I'll help you do this. You can write one like mine. I'm going to help you right now, or you can kind of do your own thing. So I'm going to say 11 is money, like 11 bucks an hour, and 385 is like the entire paycheck. And X here is how many hours they work. So think about it this way. If you make $11 an hour, if you work for 1 hour, you make 11 times 1. If you work for 6 hours, you make 11 times 6. If you work X hours, you make 11 times X. You don't know exactly how many hours that is. So what we could do here is we could say Hank makes $11 per hour. On his last paycheck, or I'll say this, I'll say last week Hank earned a total of $385. How many hours did Hank work? Now, the interesting thing about this is we have to solve it now. So here's a real world problem. And how would you solve it? Well, you would start with 11 times x equals 385. And how do you solve a multiplication one-step equation? You divide. And you divide both sides of the equation by 11. 11 divided by 11 cancels. And so I have x equals. And now I have 385 divided by 11. 11 goes into 38 3 times. 3 times 11 is 33. 38 minus 33 is 5. 11 goes into 55 5 times. 5 times 11 is 55. And I get 0. X is equal to 35. Hank worked 35 hours. And that should make sense, because if you work 35 hours and you make $11 each hour that you work, 35 times 11 is $385. Cool. We are done with page 315. Good job.